The sun burned bright overhead, bathing the tranquil suburban street in radiant golden light when the sound of laughter shattered the peace. This wasn't the gentle, pure laughter of playing children, but rather harsh, vicious, taunting laughter that held venom in every syllable. Upon the fractured sidewalk, a teenage girl named Marissa fought to maintain her footing as her crutches dipped slightly into the irregular surface. Having been born with cerebral palsy, she had become accustomed to the murmurs, the stares, and the hateful remarks directed at her. However, on this particular day, it went beyond whispers. It became physical. A cluster of older boys surrounded her like predatory birds, mocking, gesturing, and then without warning, one of them shoved her with such force that she lost her balance and tumbled into the center of the street. Her crutches crashed onto the pavement. For one fleeting, suspended moment, time itself appeared to stand still. Her frame lay sprawled across the scorching asphalt, vehicles approaching in the distance, and the sound of mockery ringing in her ears. If you believe kindness holds more power than cruelty, that second chances and empathy possess the ability to transform the world, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Untold Stories 0.4. Together, we can amplify the types of stories that remind us of the humanity that still exists. While Marissa attempted to lift herself up, her knees bleeding and her hands trembling, the boys persisted in their harassment. One of them sent her crutch sliding further from reach, while another mimicked a limp in ridicule. Her throat constricted, tears burned behind her eyes, but she pressed her lip between her teeth to prevent them from spilling over. She had discovered long before that displaying vulnerability only intensified their viciousness. Still, in that instant, sitting exposed on the pavement with vehicles beginning to decelerate and motorists watching, she felt more insignificant than she ever had. The sharp ache of shame cut far deeper than the physical pain of her fall. She reflected on all the occasions she had prayed she could simply disappear into the crowd, just move like everybody else, just avoid being singled out. However, her circumstances were different. And on this day, it appeared the world was determined to break her spirit entirely. Then, as though the universe itself had tired of the barbarism, the thunder of engines permeated the atmosphere. Initially, it was barely audible, a faraway rumble, but within moments it intensified, becoming louder, fuller, more commanding, until it completely overshadowed the bullies' laughter. Further down the street, a procession of motorcycles emerged, chrome catching the sunlight, the roar demanding everyone's attention. The boys' sneers began to fade. Residents peered through their window blinds, and Marissa, still sitting vulnerable on the road, turned her gaze to witness them. Leather jackets, insignias of the notorious Hells Angels, imposing men adorned with tattoos and hardened faces, advancing in formation like an impenetrable fortress. The spectacle was staggering, almost cinematic, and frightening to some, but to Marissa, it represented salvation manifesting in the most unforeseen manner. The motorcycles decelerated to a stop precisely where the boys were positioned, engines continuing to idle, rumbling like predators, anticipating instruction. One after another, the riders dismounted. Boot heels struck the concrete and an oppressive silence descended upon the street. The boys exchanged nervous glances, their false confidence evaporating with each stride the bikers advanced toward them. Verbal warnings were unnecessary. The mere presence of these men, rugged, imposing, unwavering, proved sufficient. The boys dispersed, stammering justifications, their hostility crumbling into cowardice as they retreated along the sidewalk. For the first time that afternoon, Marissa found herself encircled not by tormentors, but by defenders. One of the bikers, a man with silver hair woven into a ponytail and eyes that were piercing yet compassionate, approached Marissa. Without a moment's hesitation, he knelt down, retrieved her crutches, and carefully assisted her back to standing. "You're safe now," his demeanor seemed to convey, though he remained largely silent. Another biker removed his leather vest and placed it gently across her shoulders, protecting her from the stares of those observing from the margins. In that precious moment, Marissa was no longer just a disabled girl who had been thrown into the street. She was someone deserving of protection, someone whose dignity held value, someone who was no longer isolated. As they guided her toward the sidewalk, the bikers positioned themselves like a shield between her and everyone else. Vehicles passed slowly, their occupants sneaking glances, some capturing footage on their mobile devices. But what they documented wasn't brutality. It was compassion clothed in the most unlikely form. These men, so frequently prejudged by society for their rough appearances, their patched leather jackets, and their rebellious reputation, had transformed into angels in the most authentic sense, for one terrified young girl. The encounter didn't conclude there. Throughout the subsequent weeks, the Hells Angels came back to Marissa's neighborhood, not as a threatening presence, but as a network of support. They visited her regularly, occasionally accompanied her family on rides to ensure she felt protected, and even organized fundraising efforts to help her obtain a specialized wheelchair that would grant her greater autonomy. For Marissa, the experience transcended mere protection. It was about being acknowledged, honored, and cherished in a world that frequently ignored or marginalized her. Her self-assurance began to flourish. She started navigating her school corridors with her chin lifted higher, not because the bullies had completely disappeared, but because she understood she had people who recognized her resilience. And regarding those boys, rumors had circulated rapidly. Nobody wished to antagonize the girl the angels had championed. But more significantly, the community itself began to evolve. Individuals who previously looked away when they witnessed cruelty occurring now reconsidered their inaction. Some even intervened where previously they might have remained passive, because kindness, when demonstrated so courageously, can create ripples that extend in directions no one anticipates. Marissa's story serves as a reminder that sometimes assistance arrives from the most improbable sources and heroes don't always resemble the ones in fairy tales. Sometimes they arrive on motorcycles wearing leather vests with thundering engines and demonstrate that nobody deserves to be abandoned on the ground while others mock them. Sometimes the most intimidating appearances conceal the most tender hearts. And sometimes strangers can transform into the defenders of dignity we never realized we required. If this story resonated with your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Untold Stories 0.4. Stories like this serve as reminders that even in a world saturated with cruelty, there are always those prepared to defend what's right. Your support enables us to share more moments of hope, compassion, and humanity. And before we conclude, share with us in the comments. Do you believe that kindness from strangers possesses the power to alter a person's life permanently? We'd love to hear your perspective. Because ultimately, kindness doesn't merely transform the moment, it transforms the world, one gesture at a time. And Marissa's story, the girl who collapsed in the street, but stood again with the assistance of unexpected angels, will eternally remind us of the transformative power of compassion.